I think what inspires the artists and what motivates the artists really can't be explained. I think it's a form of consciousness. It's a higher level of consciousness.
There are a lot of photographers, Lee Freelander, Robert Frank, Deanne Arbus, Gary Winogrand, all these. Especially with my flower imagery, I really am inspired by Imogene Cunningham and Georgia O'Keeffe, her flower paintings. I consider the whole art world an inspiration.
Nature inspires me, and I like simple beauty in the natural setting, and also I like transform something into totally different thing, using mundane, humble materials.
Process itself, I think that's the most important part of art making, rather than the elements and principles of design. I think process should be an element of design. There is the formula of form plus matter equals complete concept, but missing in that formula is the combination of those two elements and combining those to create the concept, which is process. And I believe creating artwork is all about the energy, and that's involved in the process. If the energy is negative, you're not going to be able to create a good piece of artwork. You have to approach it with positive thinking.
I really want to motivate other people to go back and practice traditional darkroom methods. I really want people to enjoy traditional processes, and I think with digital photography, a lot of that gets erased and looked over, and I feel that we need to embrace it. As much as we embrace oil painting or we embrace printmaking, I think we really need to go back and use traditional darkroom methods.
I use a paper, but it looked like a rock, so I like kind of a trick the viewers. Then also I goes back to my childhood, and I was born and raised in Japan. And so when I create something, my mind is going back to Japan. And then I like the sense of wonderment, the childish kind of enjoyment, that innocent, total joy without worrying about a lot of other stuff. So when I create, I would be in that zone.
My process, I believe, involves the viewer in a lot of ways, and that's my goal of making a successful piece of artwork, is so that the viewer is actually part of the final piece of artwork. So with that, I start by finding objects. I use found materials, and then combine those objects and materials, and those objects carry resonance from a history, a past. And I think that past influences my intuition during the process. So those objects are actually a part of the final artwork, and then combining those objects and the resonance of those influence my intuition, but then the artwork's not completed yet. I believe in creating abstract art to create an emotion for the viewer rather than a literal description, and then that way the viewer is involved and the viewer becomes part of the artwork. And ultimately everything is art, and the viewer is the art too.
I have an ongoing project which I've been doing or working on for a couple of months. It's focused on entropy, which is decay, downfall, deterioration, chemical breakdowns, more or less, molecular breakdowns, and it's all about decomposition, society's decomposition. It's about floral decomposition. It's about decay that you can't stop, and we're all aging. It's a process that we try to control, and there's no stopping. It's like a freight train, so it's time. And so I actually started this body of work like 6 or 7 months ago, and it's it was during the winter when things start to die, and I was going through my own issues with depression, and I felt that I started to see myself in my work at that very moment. My feelings, my emotions were starting to reflect in my imagery. And I really feel that for the first time there is emotion in my work, or I at least can see the emotion, and I became attached and intertwined and really started to explore myself, and it's all about my reflection and my thoughts, and it's about me this time.
This is called a cyanotype, and I was doing weeding in my backyard, and then I uprooted one of those plants that so-called weed. But when I look at this, you know, and this is actually looks more beautiful than actual plant. And also, I want to show the part used to be invisible. Those are the roots. So in my art, I usually present two different ways of looking at things, like a front and back, then visible and invisible. So I'm always interested in dualism, like a life and death, and public face versus private face. So even though I'm presenting something here, but always suggesting at least two ways of looking at things.
My process is, what I do is first discover found materials, natural and human-made. I look for line, like pipes, hose, any kind of materials of linear quality, and then I combine them and they sort of form. I create an armature, which a lot of times I compare that to a skeleton of a body, and then after I combine them, I make sure the structure is solid, and then I use foam rubber and bind it around the skeletal structure, so that sort of acts like as a muscle, the meat of the artwork. And then the final stage, I'll dip cloth in latex paint and put it over the structure, which makes the structure durable, but also acts as a skin and abstracts some of the interior forms a little more. And then while I'm dipping it into the paint, sometimes I'll use the paint that I'm using as the adhesive to color the sculpture. And then a lot of times I'll add paint to color the sculpture. And that's part of working intuitively.
Art is about communities, and art is about improving communities, but it's also about the artist. And it's okay to do things for yourself. It's okay to explore art on an emotional level. It's okay to do art for you. It doesn't have to be for everyone. It doesn't have to make major changes or huge tides. It can just be about the artist.
Everything has an inherent beauty. So my goal is to bring out that beauty. I don't create beauty, I just rediscover the beauty, then present my way.
I remember one of my favorite memories was I was at my grandmother's cottage, and it was storming, and we were by the lake, and I just felt like I had to draw the lightning hitting the lake. And I was about 4 years old then. And then I started to draw, and it didn't matter what kind of toys I had. I just wanted to work with materials. I didn't really play with toys too much. If I was to get Legos, I would never make what's on the box. I just open the Legos and throw the box away and make a sculpture, basically. And so I did that my whole life, and I never realized I was talented. Like, my parents just, you know, it was my hobby. They didn't say, you need to be an artist or you should be an artist. Until 11th grade in high school is when I took my first art class. And because the art instructor seen some of my work and he said, you should take, you know, an art class. And then that's when people started telling me I was really talented. And I went into college debating whether I was gonna be an artist. And then I still wanted to do something creative, so I worked in a lot of different mediums, drawing, painting. I worked digital, and finally I decided to study graphic design. So I studied graphic design for a while, and then I wanted to express myself a little more, which I was able to do in graphic design, but I was curious and wanted to see what I could do with different mediums.
My teacher in high school, actually, she told me that I was actually on newspaper, and she told me to use a camera one day, and I never used a camera before. And I said, I don't know how to use the camera. What is this thing? A fully manual camera. And I looked at her, I said, are you crazy? And she said, no, I'll show you how to do it. She's very patient with me, and she walked me through everything, showed me the f-stops and shutter speeds, and it was really confusing at first, but then I got it. And then I started challenging myself and pushing myself in different directions and going to sporting events, and I really got into it. It was one thing I really enjoyed about high school.
I never considered myself as an artist before. Then I always enjoyed looking at art, so I was a viewer, an audience, not the person who will create. But something happened more than 10 years ago. I love pets, so I used to have dogs and 2 cats. Then my oldest cat, she lived until age 21, but just before she passed away, I wanted to do something, so I happened to have a charcoal and paper. So when she was sleeping, I did the sketch. Then I used my finger to smear the charcoal as if I were caressing her. Then it turned out to be something that I never expected. Then it moved me, even though I did it, but I couldn't believe I did it. So I thought maybe art is something like probably the higher being use the person as an instrument, then let it go. Then it just comes naturally. That is something totally unexpected. Then that's my beginning as an artist.
The term Detroit's a blank canvas. I hear that quite a bit, and I think, I mean, look at the history of Detroit and art, and I think it's a canvas that's just constantly being painted over, and it's constantly in transition and change, and that's what art is. So if you, in a way, like, if you will, say Detroit is the artist, and Detroit is the medium, Detroit is the canvas, it's not blank at all, it's just being painted over. As the painter would do if he runs out of materials. The artist is never finished, the artist never stops growing. And I think Detroit is in transition. It's a piece of artwork that's being manipulated and changed, and it's always going to be like that.